It is perhaps the most recognizable vehicle in history. It carried soldiers across Europe and World War II, it traversed the jungles of the Pacific, and today it's parked in driveways all over the world. General George Marshall called it the America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. Enzo Ferrari called it the only true American sports car. We all know what a Jeep looks like, but here's a simple question that stumps almost everyone. Why is it actually called a Jeep? Was it a military acronym, a mispronunciation? Or was it named after a magical comic book character? The answer isn't as simple as you think. It's a mix of military secrecy, corporate rivalry, and a cartoon dog. Welcome to Simple Things Surprising Histories. Today, we are uncovering the surprising history of the name Jeep. To understand the name, we first have to understand the machine. The year is 1940. The world is on the brink of war, and the U.S. Army has a problem. They need a light reconnaissance vehicle to replace the horse and motorcycle. They send out a request to 135 car manufacturers. The requirements are brutal. It has to be light, four-wheel drive, and, here's the kicker, they need a working prototype in just 49 days. Only one company took the bait, the tiny, bankrupt American Bantam car company. They worked around the clock and delivered a vehicle known as the Bantam reconnaissance car. It was a miracle of engineering. However, the Army worried that Bantam was too small to build enough of them, so they handed Bantam's blueprints to two giants, Ford and Willys-Overland. By 1941, 3 different versions of this little truck were being tested. Soldiers loved them. They were bouncy, rugged, and could go anywhere. But officially, they weren't called Jeeps yet. They were called Bantams, buggies, or blitz buggies. So where did the name come from? Let's look at the most famous theory first. If you ask your grandfather or history teacher why it's called a Jeep, they will likely tell you the GP theory. The story goes that the vehicle was designated GP for general purpose. Soldiers slurred the 2 letters together, Jeep, 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 and the name stuck. It sounds logical, it sounds perfect, but historians say it is almost certainly wrong. Here's the reality. The GP designation was only used by Ford, and in Ford's manufacturing code of 1940, G stood for government contract, and P didn't stand for purpose. It was Ford's code for a vehicle with an 80-inch wheelbase. Furthermore, the Willys version, which became the standard design, was officially the Willys MB. There was no GP in their name. If the soldiers were already calling the Willys model a Jeep, it couldn't have come from a Ford part number. So if general purpose is a myth, where did the soldiers get the word? For that, we have to look at the funny pages. In the late 1930s, Popeye the Sailor Man was one of the most popular comic strips in America. In 1936, the creator E.C. Segar introduced a new character, a mysterious, magical animal from the 4th dimension called Eugene the Jeep. Eugene was small, quick, and had the power to teleport. He could go anywhere and solve any problem, and the only sound he made was, Jeep, Jeep. This character became a cultural phenomenon. Jeep became a slang word for anything extraordinary, untried, or weird. When the new Army trucks arrived, they were exactly like Eugene. They were small, they moved in ways normal cars couldn't, and they could seemingly solve any problem on the battlefield. Soldiers, who grew up reading Popeye, looked at this bouncing little car and said, "It's a Jeep." It was a nickname, born of affection, but it wasn't official until one man drove up some stairs. The moment the name became permanent happened in February 1941. Irving, or Red Hossman, was a test driver for Willys. He was in Washington, D.C., demonstrating the vehicle's power to politicians and press. To show off, he actually drove the vehicle right up the steps of the United States Capitol building. A reporter for the Washington Daily News, Catherine Hillier, was stunned. She ran over to Hossman and asked, "What is this thing?" Hossman didn't say, "It's a Willys MB," or "It's a quarter-ton truck." He simply smiled and said, "It's a Jeep." The next day, the photo appeared in the paper with the caption referring to the car as a Jeep. The name was printed in black and white, and from that moment on, there was no going back. After the war, Willys-Overland was smart. They trademarked the name Jeep in 1950, cementing it as a brand, not just a nickname. So while the general purpose theory is safe and boring, the truth is much more human. The name came from a mix of mechanic slang, a magical comic book dog, and a test driver who knew how to make a good headline. It's a name that signifies adventure, just like the vehicle itself. If you enjoyed this ride through history, hit that like button and subscribe to Simple Things Surprising Histories for more surprising stories behind the everyday world. I'll see you in the next chapter.